All right, I'd like to call to order the Board of Education Finance Committee meeting for Monday, February 10th, 2025. Start off item number 2, public comment. Don't see anyone here, so we'll move on to item number 3, approval of the minutes from January 13th, 2025. Bonnie, did you receive any correction? No. All right, does anyone have any at this time? Hearing none, I will make a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, the minutes pass. Item number 4, discussion and consideration. We have the fiscal year 2024-2025 6-month review. Go ahead and get started with that. Mr.
Okay,
Lindsay.
well, good evening. So I always think it's a good idea to bring to you where we're at the 6th month. Let's just see how we progress through the fiscal year, if we're on target, if there's concerns, and where we think we'll end up. So I think when you see this, you'll say we're in really good shape. I think everything's kind of right where it's supposed to be. There's always little plus and minuses in a budget process, but overall it's progressing and I'm comfortable with what we have. So a little bit about the education fund. So we received 49% of our tax receipts, which is where we expect to be at this point in the fiscal year. We'll receive the rest of the payments in May and June. Our personal property replacement taxes are pretty much typical of this. We will receive some additional payments. Those usually come in the springtime. We may see those March and possibly June. And we expect it to be right where we're at. Traditionally, we've seen some of the personal property replacement tax come down, so that's been an area that we received less revenue over time. Our fees look really good. At 6% is normal. We will still anticipate athletic fees and participation fees for spring, and then we'll start to see some of the registration fees start to come into the school district budget. Food services at 52%, so that's kind of right where we want to be with our food service. It means that they're meeting their targets as well. Interest income, very high, which is good for us, right? We've had some years where it hasn't been so rosy for the district. And that's kind of a tough call for us, right? We always don't know what the economy is going to be. So we don't know what CPI is going to be. We don't know what the levy might be. And a lot of times we make investments that we don't see the return for several years out. And a couple years ago, we made some choices to start laddering out our investments. So we took advantage of the market and some good rates of return on CDs, and we are actually invested out to about 2030 now. They range anywhere from maybe 4.2 to as high as 5.2%. So I think we'll have some good returns for the district over time. They're not a large amount of money, so we're not vulnerable, but they are enough to give us a good rate of return. Possibly at a time when we need them.
Would you expect that in the second half of the year, the first half of the year to be the same?
I would probably say yes. Okay. There might be a little bit decline. We have noticed that some of the CDs that we've purchased before were non-callable, so they wrote out over the long duration of where we purchased them. We have bought some callable CDs that may come back. The interest rates are typically higher, but we're going to take that risk, so hopefully we'll get the return. If they don't, there's still a good rate to lock in for the duration of that. So it may come down a little bit, but I still think we're trending really strong for a good return year.
Thank you.
And then our donations seem to be very low this year, and a lot of times I think that's because our PTOs and other groups raise funds throughout the year, and then we'll see those come in at the end of year, either end of year teacher wish lists or those types of things. And our other receipts are just kind of miscellaneous things that we have. They could be prior year refunds. They could be just some other receipts that we received that we didn't anticipate. And that's probably trending right where we thought it would be. When we look at our state funds, our SPED services, which is our reimbursement for some of our categorical groups, you'll see some of those below, but we're trending on target as well. Our career tech ed's a little low. So that's always something that we would review in our office for a couple of reasons. Is it just a trend? Is it just timing purposes? Is it just a reimbursement time frame? So we'll look at that again. Usually we claim that through Valley's, so it's probably just the cycle of reimbursement that we're looking at to kind of true up. When we look at our driver's ed, that's typical as well. For some reason, those payments usually don't come to us till the very end of the fiscal year from the state of Illinois, so I'm not so worried. Our ALOP is looking really good for our Alternative Learning Opportunity Program, and that flows through to us through the ROE. When it comes to the receipts, so the CARES came in at the full amount that we'd asked for. Our Title I's trending right on at 47%. We're a little higher in our student achievement, so that means we may have purchased or already invested in that type of grant, and then we've got the funding back. So we're really good about trying to keep our grants submitted on time for reimbursement. Same thing with IDEA. We had a very large claim in our flow-through, so our practice is to spend it at the beginning of the fiscal year, claim it, make sure we get it in time before the end of the fiscal year occurs. Our teacher quality, which is our Title II, which a lot of PD comes from, we'll see that continue through the year and even into May, June when the school year's over, when we're investing in our teachers and our teacher training. Our Title III comes through later in the year as well. And our Medicaid is very high this year. There were some claim adjustments that occurred, so we realized some larger funds than we normally would anticipate. So we expected $79,721,000 roughly, and we got $38,752,000. So we're right about 49%, which is right on track for the education fund. Okay, any questions? Operations and maintenance, same thing. Tax receipts are very comparable from fund to fund. Our rental income's a little lower. Sometimes that's a billing process where the rental's the use of our facilities. For some reason that's a little lower this year, so I may need to take a look at it's just a billing and receipt process, where just maybe have less people using our facilities. And we did make it a little more restrictive because we did require some additional requirements to protect us through the risk management insurance process, and that may have effect, which we will review. Parking fees are right on track. We do collect those and we put that back in. So think about things such as resurfacing of the parking lot or lines on the parking lot. That's where those funds go back into. We've had no growth, so there's no developer fees, and our interest income is doing extremely well in this fund. A lot of our interest income is based upon the prior month's fund balances is what we use. So when money's not spent, we still invest it at a higher level than we normally would, which sometimes explains why an interest might be higher than the other. Our miscellaneous income, we did have some surplus computers that we had submitted for some compensation, and we've done that. We got a little bit more than we anticipated early in the budget. That's done through our tech department. And our E-rate is basically a program that invests back into us for certain types of technology, and we've almost got all the funds that we anticipated this year. So that is Mr. Wilkes' program that he runs through the technology department. Evidence-based funding, it's at 91% for December. It will be completed in January, and then those receipts from the state go back over to the education fund, which is how we do that. So we fund O&M first, then we do education. We anticipate getting all of our EBF this year. So this particular fund's at 56%, which is a good place for it to be. Any questions on operations and maintenance? Okay, our debt service fund, not a whole lot to explain for that other than the fact that we've got more than the tax receipts than we anticipated. Remember the county levies for that plus 1%, which is why that's more than 49 or 50. And then we have strong interest income, so we're at 52% for the debt service fund. Transportation fund, again, taxes are where they are for the other funds. Our student pay rider fees are where students that don't qualify for free busing pay for that with excess capacity that we have in our transportation system. So we've done pretty good about budgeting, almost it's used up to capacity. Our co-curriculars, those are the ones that we provide for our non-public, a little higher, so they've utilized us more this year, and we'll adjust our budget next year. Our interest income looks very good, and some of our sales that are still lower are our buses. We still anticipate some of our buses coming this year, so we still may see some of our bus sales go up. We received just 7% of our regular vocational transportation. Seems like it's a little lower this year for our claims. It could have to do with our ridership, so that's an area that we need to review as a department. And I'll meet with transportation just to make sure that our claims are going in correctly. I do know that some of those reimbursements will likely come down further with some of the state funding next year, so we may have to adjust that number. And the other part that impacted that is if, as you recall, some of that reimbursement comes from depreciation, and because we didn't get our buses, that's kind of messed up our schedule, so we can't make the full claim that we would like. So hopefully we'll go back on track with that. And then lastly, our special needs comes in our installments, so all we really would have received is October. We'll still have our January, April, and June installment payments, so we'll get up to where we need to be in the budget. 45%, not where we'd like to be, but still a good number for transportation. I'll just keep going unless there's questions. Municipal retirement, really that comes through our taxes. We do get some interest income out of that. It's been very strong for that area. We'll probably review our distribution for that particular fund. It may not need all the interest income. We may reallocate that someplace else where it could be better utilized. And we're at 53% for that. So that's the FICA Medicare IMRF comes out of this particular fund.
Are we 100% funded in what liabilities we have?
For FICA Medicare, we just automatically collect that and flow that through the federal government. For IMRF, I could see what funding level we are. That every year they adjust that for us, and that tells us how much the employer and the employee have to contribute. So that amount fluctuates every year as to whether we're fully funded. Typically, IMRF is, but I can also check with the pension fund just to see where they have us, and I can report back to you on that.
Thank you.
I'll take a quick note. Okay, our capital projects. So overall, this is really just interest income that comes into that. It's very high, higher than I anticipated. Some of that has to do with the fact that we have some projects we still have to complete. So there's still several $1 million that were invested that I probably anticipated being done by now. But as we know, there's still 6 months left in the fiscal year. So I'm not too worried about that. Any interest that we have just goes back into our capital projects and stays in this particular fund. Okay, I just split this up because there's really not a whole lot on the working cash and the tort because all they both receive is interest income. So they're still doing fairly well for their area. The reason why some of the interest is off between different funds is it has to do with their fund balance. That's a calculation that we take off of them. So if they're high or low, that could explain what it is. But not concerned with these. These just simply receive interest income. We do not levy for either one of these areas. And lastly, our fire prevention fund, interest income again. The reason that's lower is because we've done a lot of our projects this year, probably faster than I anticipated, so there wasn't as much to invest in this fund, but still we've still got a return for that. So overall, when you look at all of our funds, I put together for the committee, the local, the state, and the federal revenue for each one of those. I think the number that we probably want to look at are the three columns to the right. Where are we at for the 6th month? We're at $59,797,759 compared to what we budgeted, which is $119,802,398, which is 50%. I did take out the interfund transfers, so I didn't want that to, sometimes that makes it look better than it is. So by taking those out, these are true, genuine numbers that we actually received for what I would call new dollars. Okay, any questions on the summary of all revenues?
So halfway through the year, 50%?
Yes, I'm thinking about retiring. I'm
It's
almost
almost
perfect.
like you planned it, Todd. Almost like you planned
It's almost like batting 1,000. All right, so this is expenditures. So the education fund, keep in mind that the salary is a little lower. That's because we accrue back those payments to teachers, so we pay them out at the end of the year. That's part of being modified accrual, and yet we pay them over in August and September, so they really do hit our financial system. So those will actually get higher as we get close to the end of the year. So instead of 2 payments in June, we'll have 6 that hit the account. Benefits mirrors that. Our purchase services are about 62%. I like them to be a little higher. These are funds that we've allocated to be spent and spent for the students in this current year in our initiatives. And I do like to see those numbers higher. Materials and supplies are right on target. Our capital equipment's a little higher, which is good. I'm only concerned if we're not spending the money, then I'd have to ask why. And then, so I'm very good with these numbers. Our other expenses, keep in mind that that's the Mid-Valley, that's our co-op tuition. So we prepay a large portion of that, so they have operating capital. And then we pay the difference once we have a more stable student count, and it helps us with our reconciliation. And our now capital equipment is just those purchases under $3,000. So 42% for the 6 months in, that is a good number for us. Operations and maintenance. So same thing. They're a little under. So a question might be is why is this a lower number for our salaries? It has to do with staffing. So as you know, if we don't have it staff, we'll use some temp services and we'll basically hire people. So usually you'll see our purchase services up a little higher, and that's 53%. So that's kind of the balancing number there. And our benefits are a little lower. They're similar to, the comment above, but we will adjust those if we feel they're off. Materials and supplies, I did note when I looked through all the different types of expenditures within that, the one area that was the lowest was natural gas. Makes sense, right? We're kind of hitting that time frame that we don't really heat it a lot in November where we get that December bill, but we will see that area pick up. That's just one area that I've seen stand out in our supplies and materials. Our capital equipment is a little lower, probably likely because we're using a lot of our capital projects out of Fund 60 and our life health safety out of Fund 90, and they'll come back and spend this down later on in the years. The other ones get completed and they have some more local projects. We do ask our areas if they have some other needs, and they will fulfill those with some of their funds that they've set aside. Our other expense is a little low. One of the reasons why is because I put $75,000 in this fund for contingencies. We've always done that as a practice in case there's an emergency, so that's why 19%. I won't spend that unless it's absolutely needed. And then our non-capital equipment, we bought quite a bit of equipment this year, so they just have 22% left to spend. So overall, at 48%, that is a good number for operations and maintenance. Looking at our debt service, again, we're right where we're supposed to be. The student devices is the one area that we pay out of our debt service fund, and that came in basically right at 100%. It was $4 off, so I'll take that. And then I did put on there that there were some other expenses. There's a June payment that will be coming up, which is the last payment that we'll make in the fiscal year for our debt service. And anticipating that, I project that we'll be right at 100% for our debt service fund. Transportation, same thing, salary and benefits. Our benefits are a little lower. I went back and reviewed that. It looks like there were some changes for insurance type. So between the PPO and HMO, an employee can elect to change their selection, or they could have been single family and then family back to something else. So sometimes that's the number that I look at with the benefits. So that is an area that I will review just to see if there's something that needs to be modified for next year's budget. Our purchase services are a little higher. We did have a lot more staff that we had to train. So in particular, when it comes to students with special needs, we send them to a conference to be trained on that occurs out of state. And so that's one of the areas that were up. Plus, there were quite a few bus repairs that we've had this year. Some of them we've had to have assistance, or you think of something like towing. Those will all come from that. That's, I guess, one of the side effects of having the fleet that got a little older. So that's always a concern as well. And then lastly, for capital equipment, we have placed all the bus purchases that have been approved by the board. We anticipate those to come in June and spend the rest of those funds. And then our other expenses are kind of low right now, but again, they also have a contingency that I built into theirs. It's usually in case we have an engine failure or a transmission go out, and we do have a little bit of that built into that. And then they've not spent their new equipment, but I will tell you that they did purchase something, so I do see that going up in January, even though you can't see the financial numbers yet. I'm not so worried. That was in the works. So overall, at 28%, lower than I like, but the biggest chunk of that is the fact we haven't purchased buses. So that would make up the difference.
With the purchase services, this is really like the second year that we're into this new strategy of keeping our buses longer and doing the extra maintenance that's going to be required since we own them. So I would assume over a 3 or 4 year period, we're going to get a better understanding of what the typical maintenance cost is as the buses get older, and this will be something that will get adjusted as time comes.
Right, I would expect it to go down. So we are still waiting on our state bid buses that were supposed to come last year. They were supposed to come in January of this year. They're now looking more like March. So again, that's 10 buses that would be brand new in our fleet. Instead, we have 10 buses that risk being having some type of minor failure or some replacement. So I do think it's getting better. Has hurt us in a couple ways, but there's some things we just couldn't, prepare for. This is our municipal retirement fund, so we're at 41% of that. Keep in mind that will go up again as we get into next year, and it is affected by our staffing. Capital projects, so looking at 74% of our expenditures, that means we're very well into that. We just have 26% of our projects to complete, which is a very good number for our capital projects fund. Next month, I've asked our interim director to come back and talk to you about where we're at in 24 and 25 with our capital plan and where we've spent to date, and then looking at 25, 26, so we know what kind of number that we're looking for as well. So this still is a good number for our capital projects. It's important that we do spend the funds that we put in there because they are restricted, so once they go in there, they must be used for that purpose. We don't spend anything on these two particular funds. Working cash is for investments, so that's on the revenue side, and we don't use tort the way some districts do. We use it all out of Fund 10. And then what we have left is our fire prevention and safety fund. We're at about 44%. We still have quite a few projects that we still need to complete, but we still have ample time. 56% of those still should be completed in the remaining 6 months of the fiscal year. So, again, the three columns to the right, 6 months, we're at $66,560,330. And we anticipate $132,574,203. That does not include any transfers. So, again, we're right at 50%. So, overall, the budget sometimes is a game of plus and minuses, but I really look for some detail. There's some, like I said, that have me concerned. I'll go back and look, or I'll ask whoever is in charge of that department to maybe go through that with me and justify some things. So overall, I believe we're in really good shape. Okay, any other questions for me?
Anything, Paul? Yeah, I don't have any either. Thank you for taking the time to put that together. It's helpful to see how we're doing at the midpoint. All right, item number 2 is investments and long-term debt.
Okay, another favorite topic of mine. It's all about money upstairs. So I thought it was a good idea to just come back and talk about some of our investments and some of our returns. Before I go through the numbers, I will say that we utilize PMA, which is our financial partner in our investments, and they do a very good job. And then on top of that, internally we use Fifth Third, and so Fifth Third has a couple of federal investments that we have, but mostly we've been really good with the CD investments. So those are very low risk, very low return, but we've actually done really well. So for this particular year, I thought it was good to come back to and just say, here's where we're at year to date. Here's where we're at with our budget. We're at about 74%. We just keep climbing and doing well. I think part of that is that as a department, since I've taken over as the assistant superintendent, I spend a greater period of time looking at our financials and where we can invest. Because I believe the better return we get with the dollars that we've been given by our taxpayers, we don't have to ask them for that. And when we do well, then we can use those funds for other things that we need. And we've been very good as a district. So every Tuesday I get a report from our bank of probably anywhere between 50 to 200 investments. And I spend at least 45 minutes going through that and picking out which ones I believe are best for us. And then, like I said, we've lettered those out. So we have investments in fiscal year 26, 27, 28, 29, and now we're into fiscal year 30. I'm always a little worried because that's about my retirement period. So I do look at trying to keep those even so that the money that we have out there is not something that the district, I think, would need, and then we can't get to it because we'd have to break an investment. So we've lettered those out in a way that we haven't done before to lock in a lot of returns over 5 years that we didn't utilize before. We were probably more of a short-term investor. And if you look back historically, you can kind of see that. And it's very hard to judge the market, what our investments will be. So now I think we've got some tools in place that kind of forecast that for us over each of those 5 years. And we can get a little better at estimating our interest income. Hiring Adrian Ramirez in our department is a benefit as well because he's got some background in investing. So I think the two of us are going to be a good team going forward to maximize our returns. So just want to bring good news to the board that, I'd rather have our investments look like this than the other way. And then, I think when we look at those dollars, we know we have a lot of capital projects, and this is probably a good way to fund those without asking for new dollars from anybody. We're utilizing our investments. This is what it looks like, just because graphs are nice and it gives you a visual picture. It just says what everything else we looked at in numbers, but I didn't realize those are like Chicago Bears numbers, but that's okay. So any questions on the interest income? I think you'd have those if it was the other direction, right? Okay. Then a little bit about our debt. So we had 3 general obligation bonds going into the fiscal year. We paid off one of those bonds, leaving 2 remaining bonds. So I know that you can see this in a couple places. It's embedded in the AFR, and it's clear on a couple pages of the annual comprehensive finance, and so you can see that in there as well. But I thought I'd break it out just so you can kind of see what I look at. I look at something called the debt book, and the debt book shows me what I would need by fiscal year, by calendar year, and bond payment cycle. And so so I broke those apart into the 2 bonds. So the 2017, you can see what we would pay in interest and principal, and then when that's combined with the 2016 bond and principal interest, we always try to keep a nice kind of total at the side there. It's not always perfect. It goes up and down a little bit. But this was a result of us refunding and refinancing 2 bonds and leveling the debt over time so it didn't spike as much as it did, which was something we had told our taxpayers we would try to get under control. This is what I also would like to see us do with our capital plan. Makes it easier to plan, prepare, and basically implement. And so basically of January 1st of 2031, really I make that payment in December, so it gets there in time, and I can verify it. I will have all the debt paid off. So we have some decisions going forward of what do we do with our debt, and what does our capital plan look like? What is our life, health, safety? And what next steps do we need to do to position the district where we believe it needs to be? So just kind of giving that out there, this is what it looks like as we, in the next 5 years, essentially pay off of these last 2 bonds. Okay, just to break that out from our normal documents, so we just kind of focus in on what those look like. I think that's the only slide I put on here. So any questions about our debt? Okay, so we do have 2 companies that we pay. 2 financial institutions, just so you don't send me basically the bill every year. I send the bill to PMA. PMA collects our tax dollars and invests those. And when these come due, those investments are basically matured and they go toward paying our debt. That's kind of how that works in our office. Okay, so thank you for that opportunity to present those areas to the Finance Committee.
All right, thank you. Our next item is the 2025-26 Finance Committee calendar draft. It's in our packet. I don't know if we have any discussion on that.
It just briefly, well, I'm going to share a little bit about this at our, in my report for the full board tonight. This is about the time of year that we normally bring our proposed dates to the Finance Committee and the Policy Committee to talk about. We're proposing for next year making a flip-flop. Historically, we've done the finance meeting at the first before the first full board meeting of the month, and the policy meeting before the second full meeting of the month. And we're proposing to flip those, mostly because of finance. It will better align with, some of the data that Todd wants to be able to get to the board and get to the Finance Committee at the end of each month.
So we comment I have 15 extra minutes tonight. Mr. Wilkes is not here.
Sure.
That's a joke with Mike. And Dr. Baird's absolutely correct. I feel like because the treasury report comes to you after we have a chance to close out the month and prepare the documents and validate them, a lot of times we're working off of delay of bank statements or financials or just making sure that something's correct before we post it. I thought it would be best if we switched our meetings in our committee so I could come back later in the month. That way when you get those financials, I'm here as well to address any questions, and it's probably a more relevant time to come before the committee.
All right. Sounds good. Okay, moving on. Future agenda items, we have the capital projects review, which Mr. Latham mentioned, and a 5-year financial forecast. So we'll look forward to those. Item 6, items for recommendation to the full board. We do have the 2025-26 Finance Committee calendar draft. Do I have a motion to approve that going to the full board?
So moved.
I'll second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, passes. Item 7, information legislative update. I don't have anything there. Dr. Barrett, anything?
No, me either.
Okay, great. So we will move on to adjournment. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, we stand adjourned. Thank you.